According to some scholars, the War Scroll suggests that so-called darkness, the evil enemy of all good people, is without morals and guided by greed. In the War Scroll, the Sons of Darkness's immoral and greedy leader has a name: Belial.
Cursed is Belial for his contentious purpose, and accursed for his reprehensible rule. And cursed are all the spirits of his lot for their wicked purpose.
The War Scroll talks about the Sons of Darkness, and they are those who follow a celestial figure whose name is Belial, simply a name of Satan.
Belial is their word for the devil. Different words are the same in all Christianity, Judaism, and Islam for Diabolo, Belial, and so on.
When Belial is used, it's a contraction, actually, of two Hebrew words, Beli and Ya'al. Beli, Ya'al. But we say in English, Belial. Beli is the Hebrew word for to waste or consume something, and to take it and absorb it and waste it and consume it. And Ya'al is the Hebrew word for prophet.
Is this another direct link between ancient perceptions and today's events?
Those that are involved in manipulating money, those who are overtaxing people, corrupt politicians, global financiers who are taking advantage of the poor, trying to make themselves rich, they could all be legitimately classified as sons of darkness who are breaking God's law, who are attempting to make themselves wealthy at the expense of others.
Some people are comparing the son of darkness with people who control global finance and greed and have put us in the current situation. There's a connection. Evil can come in many, many forms. And we know that economic instability can trigger all kinds of very difficult things in the world. It can trigger violence, it can trigger wars.
Some question whether the demonic Belial is upon us in the form of today's fallen Wall Street executives. The economic collapse of 2008 is one of America's pivotal events of the last decade. The repercussions were felt worldwide, with severe financial consequences that nearly led the world into a second Great Depression.
Threats to the world don't necessarily have to be physical threats in terms of violence. The economics can lead to tremendous problems and instability. So the notion of an arch enemy of good that not only is physically powerful, but also economically and politically powerful could certainly be put into the context of this idea of the sons of darkness and could pose a tremendous threat not just to the Jewish people but to the stability of the entire world.
If we accept this theory as true, should we logically expect a financial annihilation to occur in our lifetime?
Annihilation, when you say that word, a mushroom cloud comes to people's minds and everything being blown up. But that's only one way to annihilate a nation. If you decimate the economy of a nation, you annihilate it.
For believers, economic woes are perhaps only one sign that the world may be spinning out of control. Some experts note the similarities between the War Scroll and apocalyptic texts of the Bible, such as the Book of Revelation.
The Book of Revelation is a kind of Christian version of these apocalyptic Dead Sea Scrolls. You can't prize them apart. You have to see them as being connected in some way.
When you read the book of Revelation, you see a lot of the same characters, plagues and stuff going on. As a matter of fact, you have trumpets and seals and bowls, and in the War Scroll you have these same kind of things going on.
You have a cosmic conflict between good and evil, between God and ultimately the devil. It's the same in Revelation. In the Battle of Armageddon, God himself intervenes, he crushes evil, and then there's a new heaven and a new earth, and good and love ultimately win. All of those themes are shared between the War Scroll and the Book of Revelation.
Some scholars also see a convergence between the earlier War Scroll and doomsday prophecies of the more commonly accepted Hebrew Bible, or Old Testament.
There are other influences from the book of Daniel and the book of Zechariah, which mention battles, and particularly Daniel, which mentions that in the last days, Michael, the archangel, will stand with Israel and oppose oppose those who come against Israel. And so that kind of pattern is enlarged in the War Scroll, showing that angels will fight a heavenly battle alongside the sons of light.
But others debate whether there is any connection at all.
And there's no direct relationship between Armageddon and the War Scroll. It's just that both of them lived in a time of religious oppression.
Still, if the prophecies of the Hebrew Bible, Book of Revelation, and War Scroll converge, each predicting similar fates for mankind, is it mere coincidence or something more? Perhaps a repeated warning. Is a storm brewing today? A storm of evil, gathering its forces and echoing across these ancient texts. The War Scroll points to many forces making up the sons of darkness. And for some who believe in the prophecy, the ancient text predicts the exact spot where a third world war may erupt. The War Scroll, a violent tale of powerful forces battling for control of the world. Some believe it is a blueprint for Armageddon, of a 21st century war to end all wars. But can a 2,000-year-old document written by an ancient cult predict the end of the world in our time? What evidence exists to confirm that this prophecy may be converging with modern events?
The War Scroll describes a future battle, an eschatological battle. In other words, a battle that has to do with the end of days, with kind of the final battle of good versus evil.
Believers say the text of the War Scroll is explicit about from where the enemy will emerge, and see it as a clue about who they are.
They shall fight against Mesopotamia. They shall fight against all the sons of Assyria and Persia.
These lands are inhabited by people today, many of whom are hostile to the religious beliefs of the ancient Essenes and their modern counterparts. Even now, religious strife thrives throughout the region.
Mesopotamia is just a general term used to describe that area east of Jerusalem today. It would be all those countries in general that are east of Israel. Assyria, of course, is Iraq, and Persia, of course, is modern-day Iran. So as you can see, these are all involved in latter days events, and that happens to be exactly what's going on in our world right now.
Do these areas represent the past, present, and future enemies of the Sons of Light? What is the correlation between those ancient lands and today?
Part of the problem is we're not exactly sure what those regions are. And obviously the geopolitical realities of the world today are very different from those in the biblical times.
Has the War Scroll prophecy predicted the apocalypse will emanate from this same region? An area in which Christians, the Jewish people, and Muslims have clashed for over 2,000 years.
The Middle East is at the center of human civilization and has always been at the center of great conflict between these great civilizations.
You have three religions that each believe they have the final say on what God's message is to mankind. And you can't reconcile that no matter how you try. And then you have two of those religions that live right on top of each other in the Middle East.
Some believe this conflict of civilizations extended to the West on September 11, 2001, when New York City's World Trade Center Twin Towers were targeted in a terrorist suicide mission using hijacked airplanes as missiles.
There had already been several attacks. For about the past 50, 60 years, there had been trouble with militant Islam in Europe and in the Middle East. But America had always been protected from those kind of terrorist attacks. And so we suddenly joined the rest of the world in 9/11. That we suddenly realized there was this problem going on.
Nobody had experienced anything close to 9/11. Not even Israel, for example, which has had to deal with terrorism from its inception. No one has ever had to deal with an attack that took close to 3,000 people's lives, destroyed massive buildings, caused a lot of economic damage over a long period of time.
Following the September 11th attacks, conflict between the U.S. and Middle East dramatically escalated. The events of 9/11 led to wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, wars that are spreading into ancillary regions.
There are several major conflicts going on simultaneously in the Middle East. There are several different struggles for power and position and control. You have the Iran-Iraq struggle, which now transformed into Iran becoming a superpower for the area, and the Arab countries in general fearing for an imbalance in power, and maybe that might lead to a nuclear arms race in the region.
Iran, occupying the region referred to in the War Scroll as Persia, has been a center of conflict in the Persian Gulf for years, with a deeply conservative Muslim government actively hostile to the State of Israel.
Iran does play a very significant role now in the Middle East, and with the prospect of Iran developing nuclear weapons, this puts some of the other Arab states in a precarious position.
Believers in prophecy suggest it's more than mere coincidence that the very lands mentioned in the War Scroll, Mesopotamia, Assyria, and Persia, are the same lands now engulfed in conflict. Those who believe the War Scroll prophecy may converge with current events also believe there are signs that Satan haunts the tumultuous Middle East.
Down throughout history, there have been battles between those who are trying to control and to take over and to advance through conquest, and those that are trying to defend their freedoms. And I think that we're seeing similar conflicts today in our world.
But others suggest that religious conflict, particularly in the Holy Lands, is simply a discouraging but typical aspect of the human condition. What other evidence exists that the War Scroll is a true work of prophecy? According to the scroll, 7 great battles will take place, culminating in the end of days. For some scholars, 6 of those battles may have already occurred, setting the stage for the ultimate conflict of good versus evil. The Dead Sea Scrolls are the only texts that remain from the ancient library of an apocalyptic Jewish cult, the Essenes. One in particular, the War Scroll, is considered by experts to be a blueprint for Armageddon. Some suggest the message in this ancient scroll may be converging with present-day events.
The War Scroll is part of a bigger apocalyptic end-of-days scenario, which certainly is part of the Jewish worldview of how history will unfold, and of course the Christian world has picked up on that. But I think the real issue is the actual chronology.
Some believe the Essenes were convinced they would live to see the apocalypse. But commonly accepted Jewish belief spoke of a 6,000-year span between Adam, the first man, and the arrival of a Messiah who triggers Armageddon. Most believers in Judaism at the time thought they were only 4,000 years along on this timeline toward Armageddon. Were the Essenes working on a different timeline, perhaps worked out by a learned teacher among them?
This really refers to the teacher of righteousness who knows all the mysteries of the words of the prophets. So in other words, the teacher of righteousness is one who is able to read and understand Scripture and understand exactly how those ancient prophecies are now coming true, are being fulfilled in their own time and place.
According to the scroll, the Essenes believed that the final war would include the return of all the Jewish tribes to the Holy